webinar.
Good afternoon. I wanted to fill you in on what we're going to do this afternoon and how we've structured the webinar. The first thing we're going to talk about is why we think now is the time to start thinking a little bit more in depth about the investigative process, the alternative response process, speaking to you about the problems and what we see as the solutions. And then we're going to give you an overview of this initiative, how we've structured it, what the key elements are, and what our expectation is for the results of the initiative. And then we're going to talk about how we see our partnership with the sites who choose to participate and are selected. Talking about our approach, what kinds of support we're going to offer, and then the timeline for the entire initiative plus a selection process. And then we're going to have some time for questions and answers. Obviously, the answers will also be documented so that at some point in time someone can receive them if they haven't been able to listen to the webinar. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to begin to talk about where we're going with this.
Fundamentally, we're beginning this initiative from the foundation that we believe we need to do better in child protection work across the country. We base this not necessarily on just our own experience, but we do have a lot of experience here at the foundation, including my 7 years in New York City at the Administration for Children's Services. We're working.
All right. Get down.
This is my first webinar, so please bear with me. Being a former commissioner, I'm not very up to date on the latest technologies. So our fundamental starting point is that we need to do better in child protection. We come at this from our own experience, not as academics, not as experts, but as people who have done the work in the field. Too often, we think that we treat inaction as success in child protection work. We often wonder whether our caseloads drive the inaction that we take in too many situations. For the data, for example, if you just look at the 2012 national data, 6.3 million children were referred to the nation's child welfare system in 2012. Only 3.2 received any sort of response from CPS, and only 1.2 million ultimately received some kind of help. Of all of those, 1,600 children known to CPS died of maltreatment. We know that there are many more abused children out there, the data indicates this, than actually are referred. And yet, once they are reported to us, too frequently we take little action. In our experience in New York, for example, we found that many times a case would be open for investigation, closed, substantiated, closed, unsubstantiated, opened again, and you could really not tell the reason why a particular case was treated the way it was, but the bottom line for it always was closed without action. We have also done some substantial research in the past 2 years looking at what we know about what works and what doesn't in CPS. And we're afraid that the long-time CPS practices and procedures really fail to provide us with enough discernment to know which children need protection and which don't. You all know what that's like when it comes to substantiations, for example. We oftentimes substantiate on one investigation, followed up by another 2 months later, which we unsubstantiate, and we can't really, as we look back on the case sometimes after a tragedy, we can't really say why we did what we did. So policies also that involve CPS pulling children from families to be safe, they cause trauma. But policies that leave children at risk cause harm as well. child welfare, we think, lacks a robust array of evidence-based approaches to investigations, and that's the basis on which we are founding this initiative. I don't need to read you any headlines. We all see them in the papers day after day, month after month, year after year. And too often, our only response as a system around the country is to knuckle down and keep going the way we have beforehand. Now, we also think, based on, again, primarily our experience and some research, that there are available new, more effective approaches to resolve these issues. And we believe that indicates that now is the time for our systems to step up and do better in child protection work. There has also been, we think, an emergence of ideas and strategies to help systems improve how they protect our most vulnerable children. What's necessary to help keep children safe? Well, first of all, there's leadership and knowledge. We think here at the Foundation, based on our experience going back many years now of systems reform, and based on our recent experience in states as different as Ohio and New York, we think that we have a basis on which we can project success in adopting different strategies to doing what we need to do to improve child protection. We think that's what we bring, the lessons learned from the field, some lessons that researchers have indicated to us about diverse aspects of child welfare. That's what we bring. On the other hand, we plan to pair on-the-ground knowledge of local or state jurisdictions with the Casey's technical expertise and practice consultants. That's what we believe you all can bring to the table. On-the-ground knowledge of local and state jurisdictions and how they work, where we are strong, where we are weak, and that sort of information is not something that can come from a foundation. It can only come from the field. So we believe that together, On the Frontline, as a multiple-level improvement effort to determine and test new strategies and make progress toward articulating a new, measurable, effective approach to CPS investigations and also alternative response assessments. This slide gives an overall view of what we believe needs to be done in order to move us forward in child protection in this country. The challenge, of course, as you all know, is that we need to do things that are broad enough to change things and thus make a difference, while at the same time developing specific strategies that are such that they can be done and carried out. We are proposing 3 distinct strategies, which are listed here on the far left, to the effort to improve child protection. The first is something that we think we have too often been unable to do because so many other people have a part in the process by which we build a strong workforce. We believe, however, that without a strong workforce, the rest of our efforts tend to be muted and also tend to leave us without the people on the front line who have learned the lessons that we have learned in doing this work. Secondly, we believe that we can and must strengthen worker decision-making in the process. And thirdly, we think we have ways now to strengthen the system's decision-making as well. So those 3 key strategies are what we'll be talking about today. The inputs for building a strong workforce are very clear. We'll talk about them: expanding recruitment, especially targeting selection and hiring. We've had some experience with that, and we think that with the right work, we can improve agency morale, staff retention, we can lower turnover rates, and we can increase worker and family continuity so that families are not always faced with a new worker every time they turn around. When it comes to worker decision making, we think we can strengthen connections, which we have all tried to do, but we believe can be done differently, strengthening connections with mandated reporters and with the community. We also know that there is actionable data out there that would make the decisions on the part of workers much easier because they have more information than they have traditionally been able to gather. We also believe that there are new ways of building supervisory teams that if people are interested in, we'd be interested in pursuing them. And finally, we propose to build team decision-making to strengthen worker decisions. We think improved worker-supervisor decisions will come from this work, and improved relations with mandated reporters and increased correctly opened cases. That's the key, increasing correctly opened cases. We need to strengthen decision-making at the system level as well, and we propose to develop system feedback mechanisms such as ChildStat, which we implemented in New York and can be found in a couple of sites around the country. ChildStat reviews, sets, and tracks outcome measures for improved practice. And we think that can do something that is critically missing in many of our situations. I often discovered that I had trouble determining, except case by case, what was going on the front line. I also had trouble making clear to frontline staff what it was that we really believed in as an agency. By developing this kind of feedback loop, workers can know what's expected of them, and directors can become much clearer in what is getting in the way from the front line's perspective in achieving those goals. The outcomes or results we expect are very tough to achieve, but we believe if we link together these initiatives, we can achieve them. There needs to be, and we believe we can focus on a decrease in indicated reports that come back in the front door within 6 months. We believe there can be a reduction in child injuries. Yes, a reduction in child injuries after contact with the system. And overall, we believe that we can improve safety for reported children. So that's the overall vision of what the initiative On the Frontline is all about. And I'd like to introduce you now to Jan Flory, who will talk in greater detail about our workforce development. Jan?
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Many of us, at various points in our child welfare careers and lives, have experienced the workforce side of child welfare, as John mentioned, where we have had or have little or no control over workforce decisions and processes. There are fiscal constraints which dictate the vacancy rate, how many positions can you fill and when. Recruitment and hiring practices often are maybe even outside the child welfare department or system, and certainly are constrained by civil service and union contracts in various different ways. That leads you to end up with a workforce where individual workers sometimes have no idea why or how they ended up with a position on the front line where they're knocking on doors in strange neighborhoods and making critical decisions in a crisis. And they were not prepared, and they weren't the right person for the job, really. That, for many of us, we've experienced turnover rates, particularly at the front end, of up to 25%, or even in some crisis situations, up to 50% within a year. And the worst, there are two outcomes of this. One is It's a real waste of system resources to go through the recruitment, the interviewing, the hiring, and the training process only to have someone leave 3 or 6 months into the job. But the worst impact is on, as John mentioned, on our children and families who experience then an inconsistency in the kind of response that they get and a less than excellent kind of intervention from us as a system. So what are the elements of the workforce strategy here? The first one has to do with the recruitment, interviewing, and hiring process. We believe, and some of us have experienced, using competency-based principles and criteria to both recruit, interview, and hire folks. And this competency-based system has been used in private practice. It's now been used in the public system in some places. For child welfare, it means that we, with you, would determine what are the criteria, what are the qualities of the people that we're looking for that would indicate that they will be successful as a CPS worker. Some examples of those criteria might be, is this candidate inquisitive? Do they know, are they just naturally inquisitive? They're going to ask questions. Are they going to follow through? Are they persistent? Are they going to dig and dig and dig till they figure out what's going on? So those kind of techniques have been used. They can be used with supervision. We've gotten them hired. Now, what's the quality of that person who day by day is providing the direction and answering the questions of those workers in the field? Because after all, on a daily basis, it's not the commissioner or the director that's talking to them. It's that line supervisor. And as we understand really excellent supervision, it is not just making sure they follow the administrative rules, but it is a person that supervision understands development as a daily ongoing process for every worker. And it's also an element of giving support to a worker on a daily basis who's facing a lot of traumatic situations. Third thing has to do with manageable caseloads. We can do the best job in the world of all of these other things, but if workers have 20, 25 investigations a month, there's no qualitative measures in the world that we can put in place that's going to make that a doable job. So what we mean by just-in-time hiring is that there is the ability to predict on a yearly, 6-month, whatever basis, how many vacancies are we going to have, how many promotions are we going to have, and that the hiring and training pipeline is in place so that people are hired and trained to replace vacant positions very quickly, not 2 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road, which then, of course, exacerbates your turnover with workers who have to carry those vacant caseloads. So what will it take from a system point of view to be ready for this? We will be looking for a system that either has manageable caseloads of frontline workers or has the will to reduce caseloads, and we would work with you in terms of the strategies to do that. There needs to be a core team of leaders that guide the workforce efforts, and that includes, for the workforce side of this, the CPS leadership, your human resources folks, public relations people, IT systems, budget, and fiscal. What will we add to this? We will be with you during the assessment, planning, and implementation process, and we will also bring content experts in on specific aspects of this. I just want to say we've done this work, we've lived through it, and we are ready to partner with you in working through the workforce side of this.
Our second key strategy to strengthen worker decision-making by our workforce. I'd like to introduce Alicia Gilliam, who is a caseworker herself in CPS and who is one of our most experienced senior associates here at the Foundation.
So when it comes to workers, once you've gone through the recruitment and selection process and actually have the right workforce, they really need to be making the best decisions and have the tools that actually support that. And so in this area, our focus is about better prepared staff can be coached to make better quality decisions and about whether and how to protect children. That is the focus for this particular area. And there's 4 components. We want to enhance data accessibility. And when we say data accessibility, it's not just child welfare data. So it's going to be really important to work with key partners around education, mental health, juvenile justice to see how we can bring that information to the fold so that workers have all the available information about a child in a particular family so that off the top they're making those wise decisions about what needs to happen for this particular child. Is this child safe or are they not? And what are all the factors that come into play? Secondly, the critical component is around implementing team decision making. So there's the TDM model in some sites, and some of you already implement that. So the role of this would be really willing to enhance that and make sure it falls in line with the fidelity of the model. And if you do not have a team decision making model to make decisions at key decision points that bring families to the table, you'd be willing to implement that. The third component is around improving relationships. So we all know that there are times, especially different peak times in the year, where you get a lot of calls, and then over the summertime it kind of dies down. But all year round, people are mandated reporters. So there has to be some more education with our mandated reporters and build those relationships internally and externally to make appropriate calls, as well as ways to give them feedback when it's necessary. I think a lot of times what we found in the field is that when you talk to teachers and mandated reporters, they're always waiting, well, what happened next? We made this call, but it doesn't look like anything happened. We know we have to keep information protected, but what can we do to create a better relationship so they understand the process of child protection as well as their role in making sure children are safe. So really working on improving those relationships with the mandated reporters and community systems so that you get what you need when you need it. And then the last key component is to consider a new supervisory model. We've been doing some research and working with a model out of the UK around supervisory teams in which people work together, where there's one person at the top of that a system that really owns the case, and there's a team centered around them that actually does every bit and piece, every piece of the case, from clinical to different assessments. And you work together to make a decision so that it's not one person's decision about what happens with a particular case. This is a model we have not implemented yet. We're learning about it more and more. So we want to also see, this is one of those areas in the field that we really still need to grow upon and to make something out of it. So we want to learn from the jurisdictions that we're working with, what type of supervisory models are you using, but we also understand that one of the key components of working together as a team is what we want to see. So this is one of those areas where we would be bringing information to you and trying to create a model that works here in the United States in our model, in the way that we do child protection. So it's pretty simple when it comes to agency readiness and especially case consultation, but experience with team decision making is helpful, but it's not required. But we need the willingness to bring families to the table in a productive way to make key decisions, and that's something we would help with implementation if that's necessary, or improving your model that you already have. And then willingness of top leaders to convene agencies and departments to identify and make available real-time useful data. So that's very key, especially in the component in creating that accessibility to information, that the leaders around the community in education, juvenile justice, and mental health are willing to come together to figure out how do we share information, because that's critical to knowing what families need. And then when it comes to case consultation, again, we'll bring content expertise to aid in designing new teaming models and the supervisory model, support for involving stakeholders. So we will provide different consultation around involving stakeholders in the right forums and when you should bring them to the table. Comparative information on similar reform efforts. So a lot of times it's great. while you have to create your own unique situation, and I think that that's what this model is about. While there are structural pieces, this is still what's unique to your site, your jurisdiction, and what's needed where you are. But we can share a lot of national information that will help you enhance what you have. And assistance with policy and legal and labor considerations. So this kind of goes back to also the workforce. The legalities around unions and all of those different pieces, we'll be bringing consultation to you to understand what you need to do in your particular site to be able to have the right workforce and coach and support them to make the best decisions possible.
Now, Amy Baker is going to discuss with us the third key strategy, strengthening the system's ability to make decisions. Amy has extensive experience in child welfare, was Chief of Staff in New York City, also has history with the Casey Foundation. Amy?
The third stream of work focuses on strengthening agency and system decision-making through the use of a live feedback process. ChildStat, which was developed about 8 years ago by John when he was commissioner of New York City's Child Welfare Agency, will be the model for the development of these feedback processes. The ChildStat model allows for two-way feedback between frontline workers and managers and agency leadership. We found that this is crucial for leadership to hear from child protection staff about the families they're seeing, available supports, the different challenges they face, as well as how they're conducting casework and carrying out policies. It's just as important for the frontline staff to learn from leadership in a non-punitive environment about improved case practice, GPS and program trends based on data, and the appropriate use of policies. Some of you have probably observed the ChildStat session in New York. For those of you who haven't had that opportunity, I'll walk through the process for you. Child protection officers are selected on a rotating basis to present an active case. A different CPS office presents every week. The ChildStat case is selected randomly, and the CPS team is told about a week in advance which case has been selected. Staff from outside of CPS review and write up the case, including the family history, prior involvement with CPS, and the current casework. The ChildStat session includes frontline supervisors and managers involved in the case who sit at the front of the room. The agency and child protection leadership, including the commissioner or secretary, are in the audience, along with other agency leadership from both program and administrative sides. The session begins with a review of office-specific and aggregate agency data from the CPS office. The longitudinal data covers everything from caseload size, staff vacancy rates, average time to case completion, to indication rates. The CPS office is given time to provide detail to the data and what may be going on behind the data, such as a recent change in staffing, could be a neighborhood issue, or work with a nonprofit partner. During the data portion of the presentation, leadership is also given the opportunity to ask questions and dig a little deeper into the data. Then the CPS office presents the selected case. That includes the family situation, what CPS has observed so far, current case decisions, what's been working, and practice decisions they might do differently. During the presentation, leadership is able to ask clarifying questions. Once the case has been presented, leadership initiates a discussion about the case and the case practice. Discussion provides time to review the case in the context of the agency resources and policy. A good example of how ChildStat presentations and discussions can identify issues and provide real-time feedback is from the early days of ChildStat and some of the first ChildStat sessions in New York. Data and case presentations uncovered the common practice of workers indicating that abuse and neglect has taken place, and then closing the case without offering the family any services. ChildStat not only identified this trend, but also provided the opportunity to understand what was going on underneath the trend. So, such as community services, misunderstanding about agency policy, or a lack of case practice skills. The combination of the data review with clear practice examples provided the opportunity to discuss the issue and make needed changes, as well as evaluate the practice changes over time. So it wasn't just in that session, it was improvements to case practice over the next months and even years. ChildStat is truly a live feedback process, bringing all levels of child protection together with the agency's program and administrative areas to review and discuss case-level decisions and data. This process allows for identification of gaps in practice and policy and to honestly discuss and address the gaps in a non-punitive teaching environment. ChildStat model is designed to foster this honest communication. I think that's the key part of it, is that it provides an environment where there can be honest discussion and feedback from both frontline staff and managers and leadership. It's a true managerial tool designed to support good work, but also to uncover practice and workforce issues and address them. The On the Frontline team includes content experts who developed and implemented ChildStat in New York City in 2006. The team is committed to working with a selected site to develop practices and systems to support the feedback model. This includes the case reviews, the data development, and creating a quality assurance infrastructure. The case team is also committed to working with the selected site to build the senior leadership skills to lead the feedback process and to teach that improved case practice. In turn, Casey asked that the applying jurisdictions have the capacity to pull and develop child protection data, both on an office and unit level, but also on an agency-wide level. In addition, we also ask that commitments make a commitment to assign staff to both review and write up the cases and to develop the data presentations for the ChildStat sessions. Finally, we're excited to work with jurisdictions around the country that don't look like New York City, both in their size or their capacity. So we're really looking forward to working with sites to adapt the ChildStat model and to implement a live feedback process specific to the agency that's applying.
Thank you, Amy. So there you have it. Simple, but very, very difficult. Not a bunch of new ideas or new programs or new thought designs that outsiders are proposing to people who've been doing the work for all these years. What we believe is that these three strategies, when linked together, can result in real positive outcomes with real children, a decrease in repeat reports within 6 months, a reduction of child injuries after contact with the system, and improved safety for reported children. Tracy?
So I want to talk a little bit about what UCC is offering and what we see the relationship as being. You know, many of us have been in this field for a very long time, and the child protection, the investigative side, none of us have really taken on in a really big way other than differential response. And we've seen, as we've worked across the country, some problems with the way differential response has been implemented. So, as John said, this is basically our hypothesis, that these are the three areas that need to be addressed. What we have to offer is some technical assistance around implementing these, certainly regular input from experts both within Casey and outside of Casey, intensive on-site assistance, particularly when needed around crises or challenges, and then help with thinking through how to sustain new processes through funding, either federal, state, or local. But this whole set of strategies is really about a partnership more than anything else. We are not coming in with the answers to all these questions. We've done a lot of research to think these are the three groups of strategies that need to be tried. but they really require work with you in order to figure them out and figure them out appropriately for your jurisdiction. This is a partnership around innovation. We know some of these problems are so intractable, civil service, etc., but we hope we could use the clout of the Casey Foundation to help you address some of these issues that you may not have been successful at addressing in the past. We think that over a 3 to 5 year period, we will be able to help figure out which of these strategies can work, how they work, whether they work differently in some places than others. And in the long run, we hope to have a strategy that then can be adapted to other jurisdictions. We really believe these are the 3 groups of strategies that need to be undertaken to try to fix this big problem that we are all facing called child protection. Sean?
So, again, we're asking that you join us in a partnership to improve the lives of children and families in the jurisdiction who are affected by child protective investigations and alternative response assessments. What is it going to take to implement On the Frontline? A site commitment of resources and leadership. People will be needed to carry out aspects of this work, not necessarily new folks to the agency, but people who, for example, may have worked in quality assurance can now work helping to set up ChildStat. We look for the presence of a team decision-making model within the site or willingness to implement teaming practices. We look for the ability to produce and make available child protection and child case review data. And we look toward reasonable caseloads or willingness to reduce those caseloads with our advice and help in regard to just-in-time hiring. We have a very tight time frame. We all know that the longer we take to implement change, the greater the chance is of our getting bogged down by the latest crisis. So we are proposing that you submit a letter of your interest by June 13th, that we conduct throughout June and July and August some joint assessments where we sit down together and look at your interests and the possibilities of our help. And we propose that you submit proposals to us, not the Bible, but something that lays out how you expect to implement those key strategies. Applicants will be selected in September. In October, we expect to have 3 to 5 sites who will join with us in a 3-day planning conference in Baltimore. And we expect to begin On the Frontline in January. We realize this is a tight time frame, but we think it's something we can manage together. So, we are now asking for your questions and comments. Please feel free to send them in to us, and we'll do our best to answer them as we can.
So the first question that was proposed was, how do you propose working with a unionized workforce for selection and hiring?
I think that's a very important question and not easily pushed aside. We have had experience with highly unionized workforces, but it has also been our experience that they are just as interested as we are in attracting quality candidates who can then be supported and trained to do the job and who will stick with us. So work is required, letting people know what it is that we're proposing to do and get general support. But overall, in many unionized environments, we believe we can talk through the issues that may be raised.
Second question, is ChildStat review confidential or is it subject to open records disclosure?
Another very good question. I expect that it is not subject to open review, but every state's situation is going to be different. And we went out of our way as we developed the case reviews, for example, to see to it that particular information was not involved in the case that should not be put out to a broad range of people. On the other hand, this is a mechanism the agency is using to manage its business, and we believe as such it is internal.
Is there a format or template for the letter of intent?
We do have a format which we will be sending to everybody. It is not in any great detail, just expressing your interest in carrying through on assessing whether these three strategies are what you want to implement. So we'll be getting that out to everybody quite soon.
Is there financial assistance for the teams to come to Baltimore?
Yes.
Are you selecting a certain number of sites?
We hope to have 3 to 5 sites.
Is there any component for strengthening the quality of the interviews of adult witnesses and alleged perpetrators?
No, not aware of. We haven't looked at that issue.
But if it were an issue that is critical to your jurisdiction, that is one of the things that we would work with you on.
Is there a description we could get regarding the New York child stat model as well as the UK supervisory model?
Yes, we have material on child stat of some length, and we have had ongoing contacts with folks in the UK about their model, which we can make available to folks.
You mentioned problems across the country with the way differential response has been implemented. Can you say more about these problems?
What we have seen is that sometimes the criteria for determining who's in differential response versus who's in investigation are not clear at the front line at all. And the decisions appear to be, when you begin looking at the cases, they appear to be somewhat arbitrary. And if the clarity of the distinction between those two types of tracks is not really very clear at the front line, then what you end up with is a system that is just a mess. And that's the kind of thing that we've seen just in a couple of jurisdictions.
No more questions.
No more questions? All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Wait, one just came through.
We just got one.
Can you provide more information about the manageable CPS caseloads and willingness to reduce caseloads requirements?
Right. Well, we have been open in terms of describing what a reasonable caseload is. I didn't want to put numbers on it. However, I think at the far end, we can agree on the fact that caseloads such as 30 are too high for us to really implement the reforms we're thinking of. And what we propose to do is help sites work with the key actors in the field across agency boundaries to make sure that we hire up all of the positions that we actually have, rather than only being allowed, the way the system operates, to fill a position the moment it becomes vacant, and thus take 6 months to hire someone. So we believe that there are mechanisms, and we've tried this ourselves, and other states have done it as well. There are mechanisms by which we can bring caseloads down without necessarily a huge influx of dollars.
And I also think there are, possible help with your funding authority with the importance of caseloads to the entire process. Now, it's certainly every leader has made an argument about workforce to their legislative or budget authorities. But we're hoping that adding some of the Casey Klaus might help in this discussion.
We have just received approval for hiring additional workers after 2 child deaths within a few months. Is there material we can review immediately regarding hiring, training, and supervision?
There is material. We will have to pull it together as quickly as we can, but let us know in your letter what your situation is, and we'll try to make ourselves available as well as early as possible.
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Sure. It will be posted.
You mentioned dealing with a unionized workforce. What about a workforce where the worker must pass a civil service standardized test to get on a civil service list, and then the workforce is selected from the list? Is this type of workforce this initiative could assist with?
Yes, it is.
Yes. In fact, we have faced that, and it depends on how your system is set up. But it's why it would be really important to bring in the HR people, the civil service people, into the planning and thinking process about how the workforce is selected and hired. But it is possible to deal with it.
You know, with all the problems of leading your own agency, sometimes the idea of working with civil service around completely changing the whole civil service system for child protection is just daunting. And that's what we want to help you with, is to make that less daunting.
Any further questions, please contact me. My email is jmattingly, M-A-T-T-I-N-G-L-Y, at Annie E. Casey Foundation, AECF.org. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.